Now to some news that's sure to put a bad taste in the mouth of wine lovers across the country. Food and Wine magazine is sounding the alarm with a warning that 2020 could be a bad year for European wine enthusiasts.
And that's because those new tariffs on European imports proposed by the Trump administration back in December are set to kick in this year and could drive the prices of some of your favorite bottles of European vino up drastically. Oh no. Food and Wine's executive editor Ray Isle is here to break down the potential impacts of the industry. So look, I love California wines. Right. I love wines made in the United States, but I'm particular to French wines. And the good news for me is in my wine cellar. I'm very well stocked. Well, like your wine little bit. Yeah.
But you're gonna be in trouble potentially once you drink through all that.
But can you allow me to just make sure that people don't know I'm super bougie? I mean, I have one of those little refrigerators.
All the foods affected here are part of his personal food pyramid. You know how you're supposed to have fruits and vegetables on the bottom? He's cheese and wine.
These tariffs were aimed at you specifically.
President Trump said, "Hit that guy at CBS News." So what's exactly happening?
So what's happening is that the Trump administration has proposed tariffs of up to 100% on European wines, also cheeses, olive oils, a whole range of stuff. But wine is my main concern. And what's weird is it's in response to two things. It's in response to the Boeing Airbus dispute about the subsidies for Airbus. I mean, Boeing's doing its own job of causing itself problems, as we know. But and it's also partly in response to a digital revenue tax that France has proposed for Google, Amazon, anybody who large digital companies that basically trade in user information. Mm-hmm. And so the response has been that the Trump administration has proposed these 100% tariffs. The problem with that is that the fallout from that is mostly going to be U.S. companies and U.S. consumer choice. You've got, what's going to happen is those tariffs hit actually when the wine lands at the U.S. port. The U.S. importer, which is the U.S. company, mostly small companies that are independently owned, have to pay right then and there. So you're looking at potentially doubling the price of all European wines.
So is that doubling the price for the importers, or is that going to be passed on to us?
It'll be passed on to you for sure. Okay. It'll be one of two things. There's no way to sustain a 100% increase in your cost of goods. You can't absorb that and stay in business. So you've got two options. One of which is to raise the price dramatically of the wines, and the other is to just stop bringing things in. And a lot of importers I've talked to have said, if this tariff were to be enacted and go on for more than 6 months, they're out of business.
Wow.
And that means,
But their existing stock will not. In other words, if you walk into a wine store today, the existing stock is not going to be elevated. They're not going to see a rise.
No, the existing stock they'll sell through it, and then they'll move on to what's next.
Wow. Look at that, $30 for a bottle of champagne. It's going to go up to $60.
Yeah, if these are implemented.
Yeah, obviously this is a negotiating tactic, but there's already a 25% tariff in place as of October, which basically killed all the importers' last quarter profits for sure, and that's been in place for 3 months now. So I don't think it's impossible that they will institute some kind of high tariff like this.
So listen, so people will say, okay, fine, why don't you just stay domestic, right? A nice bottle of California wine, like Vlad suggested, that he likes as well.
Yeah.
California sparkling wine, not champagne.
Why won't that make a difference? I know you got to be authentic.
Yeah, you can pivot and drink something else, of course. There are a couple of reasons. One is that actually, California Chardonnay is not the same as white Burgundy, and it's a little bit like saying to someone who likes, you like your French wine. It's saying, well, you like country music, but we're not going to have country music anymore. So why don't you listen to jazz?
Right.
And your country music fan is like, I don't like jazz. I don't want to listen to jazz. Yeah. And the other thing is that it's a lot of wine coming in. It's $4 billion worth of wine that then turns into about $11 billion worth of revenue. Wine's an agricultural product. You can't just summon up a whole bunch of California wine to fill that void. And you'd have to plant new vines. You wait 3 years for the vines to get ready. You then make the wine. You wait 2 years for the wine to be bottled, and then you get into the market finally after 5 years. So it's not like an overnight. It's not like making coat hangers.
But Ray, in the United States, do we as Americans drink more wines from Europe, or do we drink more domestic wines?
We drink more domestic wines.
Okay,
we drink about 65% domestic wines, 35% import, and import includes Europe, which is the bulk of it, but also Chile, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. It's a big chunk of wine. It's not the majority of what we drink. The problem is that the U.S. represents about 15% of what Europe exports. They can pivot to exporting to other countries, fairly easily, especially to China, which is a hugely growing wine market that is currently instituting 90% tariffs on U.S. wines. So we're not able to compete in China right now. Europe is looking at this like, okay, well, I guess we'll start selling to China. The problem is the U.S. companies, if you're an importer of French wine, you can't suddenly retool your company to import New Zealand wine.
Right.
It's not really possible.
Yeah.
So you're in big trouble. And then you end up laying people off or going out of business and so on. And so the financial cost is potentially quite dire.
I think that if I throw out one alternative for people who are looking for good quality wine, Israeli wines. I've become very impressed with what is coming out of Israel in terms of wine.
It is an up and coming wine region, weirdly enough, because it's a very old wine region.
Yeah.
But there's been some really good Israeli wines recently. And it's one of those regions that people don't think about, and then it's kind of not on the top of your head, and then you taste the wines and you think, oh, these are actually pretty darn good.
Really, really good. So is there anything as a consumer, is there a write-in campaign?
Yeah,
is there something consumers can do if they
Find
say...
friends that are traveling that go into the duty-free, pick up a couple bottles.
Exactly.
So comments are open on the U.S. Trade Representative site until the 13th, and there's already 10 or 12,000 comments on there against this from store owners. It affects store owners too. It affects restaurants.
Yeah.
If you're a French restaurant,
And this is small businesses, as you said.
These are small businesses.
And when you talk about restaurants, as you know, the profit margin is so slim.
It's very slim, and a
Yeah.
lot of it, honestly, it's not the food that makes the money for the restaurant. It's usually the alcohol.
Yeah.
So you can write into the U.S. Trade Representative site, which is a good thing to do. You can contact your representative, which is the kind of the key thing. And you can mention to everybody that you're kind of annoyed by this. It's an issue of consumer choice too. It's like, I actually like to have a range of options and not have it sort of dictated by tariffs.
Yeah.
And you can all come over to my house and drink my existing stock.
That is what's going to happen.
Right?
So,
you're going to be like, come on over, I got a supply.
I'm bringing my straw.
That's right. You have a lot of new friends suddenly.
I don't got anything in boxes, Anne-Marie. That was great.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Really interesting.
Thanks.